combat, they have to lower. So women can be in the infantry, that's true, but they get lower standards. Women get lower standards in the military than men, not just because of the capability of combat.
Is it resources?
Nope. It's because your enemy will capture them and they'll essay them, and then they'll send them home pregnant in order to demoralize your population. That they would be prime loot. They're loot. That's what they would be. They would become booty, right?
Do you think men don't get essayed in wartime?
Not like women. Not even close. It's not even in the same universe.
I think the idea of them being booty or loot, charging at each other with guns, and that's not really how it works.
What do you think war looks like right now, Charlie?
It's drone warfare at the moment. We don't really do boots on the ground anymore.
Is there a lot of drone warfare going on in Russia and Ukraine?
It's also guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, is there a lot of Russia? Yeah.
If I had a gun, I think we'd be about equal.
Yeah, but
or
if
a knife or a spear or swords.
But if he had a gun, I don't think you would be equal. I think that starving peasant who's male is still going to be 10 times more dangerous than you with a gun.
With a gun?
Yes, he's fat. He's going to be faster.
Again,
he's going to be stronger. He's going to have better.
All right, guys, welcome back to MB. So we've got Andrew Wilson going head-to-head with Charlie. And look, this one gets absolutely brutal. We're talking about women in combat roles. And Charlie tries to make the case that women should be on the front lines. Like, actually on the front lines. And Andrew dude, he systematically destroys every single point. We're talking Navy SEALs, we're talking physical standards. We're talking about what actually happens when enemy forces capture female soldiers in wartime. And here's the thing, Charlie keeps trying to pivot, keeps trying to find some angle where this works. And Andrew just will not let up. Watch how this plays out. Pay attention to the moment when Andrew brings up the Russian motorcycle thing, because that's when you can see Charlie realize he's completely out of his depth here. Let's get into it.
I think if a woman meets certain requirements,
they don't meet the requirements because you have to carry the ammo and you have to carry the equipment and you have to carry.
This woman's strong enough to carry those things.
Then why is it that we can't ever seem to get a woman who can be a Navy SEAL? We've never had one.
Well, that's some pretty extreme. Most men cannot become Navy SEAls.
I agree, but only men.
Men.
But only men can. And when it comes to the idea of frontline combat, they have to lower. So women can be in the infantry, that's true, but they get lower standards. Women get lower standards in the military than men get.
Well, I think if you are, polling for whoever in defense of your country or homeland, you would take anyone who might have
even
slightly lower standards.
I guess even if I grant that we could have some very small percentage of women who are capable of doing this, and maybe we even field them, because the vast majority, the overwhelming majority, don't even have the potential. They don't even have the potential to do this. It seems to me that it's not just that women can vote to send their men off to fight by a simple majority. Just by a simple majority, they could do this by electing the politicians in office that have their pro-war stance, perhaps. And that's a fundamental unfairness in society. And it seems very obvious to me that that's very fundamentally unfair.
But women are in the military, and
in support roles.
The standards.
No, they pass standards which are lesser than men's standards. In fact, I can have Brian pull it up if you'd like to see it, but they have a different.
Sure, yeah, no, I'm fully aware of that, but they're still competent, and support roles are still important.
I agree.
And also, you don't have to be on the front lines to be killing people. My aunt flew helicopters in the Army, and she was, participating in killing people.
Well, there's another reason why you don't want them there. It's not just because of the capability of combat.
Is it resources?
Nope. It's because your enemy will capture them and they'll essay them, and then they'll send them home pregnant in order to demoralize your population, which is what the Soviets did. So, and it's what they would do in Afghanistan, and unfortunately, many times it did happen where they captured American female soldiers, and that's exactly what they did. They essayed them. And
wartime is absolutely a thing, which is why
let's not say the R word because it's YouTube.
Bad.
Yeah, you're
my
good.
Bad. Sorry.
You're good.
I forgot we have to TikTok policies.
So the problem is not just one-fold, right? It's threefold. Problem one, 98%, and that's being very charitable, of women would never even have the potential to be involved in a war that they could vote for. And
I strongly disagree with that.
Secondly, well, you could disagree, but the historic standard disagrees with you. And then secondly, the idea that women would be particularly useful in combat situations where enemy soldiers could have access to them knowing that they would be prime loot. Their loot. That's what they would be. They would become booty, right?
Do you think men don't get essayed in wartime?
Not like women. Not even close. It's not even in the same
I think
universe.
the idea of them being booty or loot is kind of ridiculous. But again,
Why?
even if I grant you all of this,
Do you think
which
they're
I-
like these?
I don't,
Do you think like the ugly mud catfish over in the Middle East? They get themselves some prime real estate of a nice, big-breasted blonde chick. You think that that's not like prime real estate to those guys?
Do you think there's no men out there in the Middle East that are into men and wouldn't be delighted?
You know what
to-
happens when
to
you're
go
in
to
the Middle
town
East
on a
and you're
little
into
twink?
men? Do you know what happens in the Middle East when you're into men? There's a special thing they do called
Yes.
fucking kill you.
Yes.
That's what happens.
Absolutely, yes, but that is why essaying prisoners would be ideal, because it can be an excuse to demoralize. There are very much...
So what would you do? Like, let's pretend Charlie is the enemy commander.
Okay.
You're the enemy commander, and your orders are to win the war by any means necessary against your enemies. And you found out that your enemies were
Okay, so hold on. Let me break down what just happened here, because this is where Andrew absolutely nails the reality that nobody wants to talk about. He just laid out 3 separate reasons why women in frontline combat is a disaster. And Charlie's only response is, but men get assaulted too. Like, are you serious right now? That's the comeback? Look, Andrew is right, and you guys already know this. The numbers don't lie. 98% of women couldn't physically do this even if they wanted to. That's not sexism, that's biology. That's reality. And Charlie wants to disagree with that? Okay, cool. But history disagrees with you, girl. The physical standards disagree with you. Basic human physiology disagrees with you. And then Andrew brings up the second point, which is the one that makes people really uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. Enemy combatants will specifically target female soldiers. They will capture them, they will assault them, they will record it, and they will use it as psychological warfare. That's not theoretical. That happened in Nanking. The Soviets did it in Afghanistan. This is documented. This is real. And when Andrew says they'd become prime loot, that sounds harsh, but that's exactly what enemy forces would view them as. That's the reality of war. War is not pretty. War is not fair. War is brutal. And you know what Charlie does? She tries to say, well, men get assaulted too. Dude, not at the same rate. Not even close. Women are specifically targeted because of the psychological impact it has. And then she tries to bring up the idea that there are men in the Middle East who are into men. Okay, yeah, and you know what happens to them in those countries? They get thrown off buildings. They get killed. That's not the same thing at all. Watch what Andrew does next. He lays out exactly what an enemy commander would do if they knew the opposing force had women in combat roles. He makes Charlie play the role of enemy commander and walks her through it step by step. You would create special units whose entire job is to capture these women, assault them, record their screams, send it back to demoralize the population, and then release them pregnant. And Charlie has no answer for that. None. Because there is no good answer. That's what would happen. That's what has happened historically. And then Andrew brings up Nanking as proof. And what does Charlie say? Well, we dropped 2 atom bombs on Japan. Okay, what does that have to do with women in combat? Like, what are we even talking about anymore? Charlie's grasping at straws here. She's trying to change the subject because she knows she's lost this point. I know you guys don't need me to explain this, but the idea that we should field women in frontline combat when we know exactly what enemy forces would do with them is insane. It's not about whether women are brave or capable in other roles. It's about the reality of what happens when they're captured. And Andrew is the only one willing to say it out loud. Let me know in the comments what you think about this, because honestly, this should be common sense, but apparently it's controversial now.
Soldiers in frontline combat where your troops had access to them. Now, what would be more diabolical or easier than creating special units whose entire job was to just capture these enemy soldiers, these female enemy soldiers, essay them, record their screams and send it to the enemy, and then release them pregnant with their babies?
How did that work out for Japan?
It worked out fine. They went through Nanking and they absolutely did that. It was called the Raping of Nanking.
Yes,
that's what it was called.
I'm fully aware of what it was called, but I mean...
It worked out well for them. They completely demoralized the Chinese. They completely subjugated them under their boots.
And then we dropped 2 atom bombs on them, and now they are essentially
Did China
a
do
vassal
that?
state. No.
No.
But their ally, the U.S., did it.
And was the U.S. fielding women in frontline combats in Japan? No.
They had nurses, but no.
No, but the Chinese, right, they were getting anybody they could. And the thing is funny is the first thing the Japanese did as part of their demoralization campaign was essay all the women and make sure that, and one of the big pieces of propaganda that they had was all of your future children are now our future children.
Yeah, it's horrible and awful. But again, look at where China is now and look at where Japan is now. People joke about the Chinese century, but I think China is a very powerful world superpower, and Japan is an American vassal state, essentially. So I think at the end of the day...
I would argue that more people would want to live in Japan than they would in China.
That doesn't change the fact that China is much more powerful than Japan.
Yeah, but it's also got way more people than Japan and a much larger land mass and way more access to resources. And we allowed them to continue to have an offensive military post-war. In Japan, we took that away from.
Well, we didn't have the option to take that away from China. Because they were our ally.
Well, we did right at the start have the option to, but we didn't. But the point is that the Japanese have not been allowed to have a military. We don't allow them to have an offensive one.
Yeah, because of what happened last time.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that, again, that's the second reason. That's the second. And then you have the third reason, which is that they can't meet the minimum requirements which would be necessary for us to even fill them if we wanted to in those situations, because they would get killed so quickly. I mean, they would just get killed so quickly.
I don't know if you have a good idea of what, no offense, but like I feel like maybe your idea of like what war looks like now is like dudes charging at each other with guns, and that's not really how it works.
What do you think war looks like right now, Charlie?
It's drone warfare at the moment. We don't really do boots on the ground anymore.
Is there a lot of drone warfare going on in Russia and Ukraine?
It's also guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, is there a lot of Russia?
I'm actually not super familiar with Russia and Ukraine, but I know there's a lot of tanks, and they're blowing people up.
They've mostly been focusing on drone combat. I'm going to tell you something really interesting that happened.
Okay.
So the Russians brought back the Dragoon. The actual Dragoon, and instead of using a horse, they use a motorcycle instead to outpace drones, and they mount AK-47 machine guns to the front of their motorcycles. And they fly past the enemy, and they mow them down.
A woman couldn't do that?
No, she couldn't.
A woman
for the most part,
ride a motorcycle and shoot a
No,
gun?
I don't think she could. I think that I don't think you really understand the physical weight requirements that are necessary to both control a motorcycle, have a heavy machine gun mounted to it that you're also firing, and carry the requisite equipment to do this. I don't think
it would
you
be
have.
tied to the motorcycle.
That doesn't make it less unwieldy. Very hard to wield. It requires physical strength to do these things.
Yes, I've shot guns before. It's just I'm unclear how a gun being mounted on a motorcycle, you're not having to carry it. You are just riding the motorcycle.
You have to control the motorcycle with your muscles.
Yes, I know how motorcycles work.
And the heavier the front end of them is, the more you have to use the muscles to steer it.
These probably aren't American.
And by the way, what do you think the
Harley-Davidsons.
110-pound woman's going to do? Kick up the kickstand and keep it up, or do you think she's going to fall over with it?
They wouldn't be recruiting 110.
But it's not just that. They are in Russia and Ukraine charging at each other with machine guns. They are on the ground fighting, just like it's World War II looking combat more than anything else. It's infantry-based warfare all over the Ukraine. Why do you think so many people are dying? Why do you think they're dying so much? Because they're engaged in frontline infantry combat day in and day out.
Is it not a lot of guerrilla stuff?
Yes, of course. Guerrilla fighting is always part of warfare.
All right. I feel like that is what the majority of warfare is now. Bombs, drones, guerrilla stuff.
War will always come down after you get past the technological barriers. So if you have a first world nation attacking a third world nation, sure, right? They're left with guerrilla warfare. We use massive amounts of technology to level major cities, things like this, and then send in an occupying force. They fight the occupying force with guerrilla warfare. That's true. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to first world nations, that's different. They have technology.
Okay, this part right here is where Andrew just absolutely dismantles the entire "but women can shoot guns" argument. And look, Charlie just said she would lose in a physical fight against a starving Russian farm boy. She said it. She admitted it. But then she says, If I had a gun, I think we'd be about equal. And Andrew immediately calls that out. No, you wouldn't be equal. And here's why. This is the part that people who have never been in the military or never had to carry heavy gear for long distances just don't understand. It's not about whether you can pull a trigger. It's not about whether you can aim a rifle when you're lying down on a table with the gun already sighted in. It's about whether you can carry that rifle and all the ammunition and all the gear and all the equipment for 60 miles through hostile terrain and still be ready to fight at the end of it. Andrew breaks this down perfectly. He says, ammunition weighs a lot. Do you agree? Yeah. How would you feel about carrying 400 rounds on your chest? I would hate it. Exactly. And that's not even all of it. That's not the magazines. That's not the rifle. That's not the cleaning kit. That's not your food, your mess kit, your sleeping bag, all your survival gear. And then, at the end of that long hike, you're expected to fight. You're expected to be combat effective. And this is where the physical strength difference becomes absolutely massive. Men are on average 50 to 75% stronger than women. That's not a small gap. That's a huge gap. And when you're talking about carrying heavy loads over long distances in extreme conditions, that gap matters. It matters a lot. Charlie tries to say, well, there are women who camp and hike and carry heavy loads. Okay, sure. But are they doing it with full combat gear? Are they doing it for days on end? Are they doing it while being shot at? Are they doing it knowing that at the end, they have to be physically capable of engaging in combat? Because that's not the same thing as going on a camping trip with your REI backpack, girl. And then Andrew brings up the Russian motorcycle thing. And this is brilliant. The Russians brought back dragoons, but instead of horses, they use motorcycles. They mount AK-47 machine guns to the front, and they fly past enemy lines, mowing people down. And Andrew asks Charlie directly, could a woman do that? And Charlie says no. She admits it. She knows she couldn't. Because controlling a motorcycle with a heavy machine gun mounted to the front while carrying all your gear requires serious physical strength. You can see Charlie starting to realize she's lost this debate. She keeps trying to pivot to, well, most warfare is guerrilla stuff now, or it's mostly drones. And Andrew shuts that down too. First world nations fighting each other, it always comes down to infantry combat eventually. Always. Technology gets blown up, supply lines get cut, and at the end of the day, it comes down to boots on the ground. That's why they train infantry. That's why physical strength still matters. And here's the thing about all of this. Andrew's not saying women can't serve in the military. He's not saying women can't be in support roles. He's saying they shouldn't be in frontline infantry combat because the physical requirements are so extreme that 98% of women couldn't do it even if they wanted to. And the 2% who maybe could, they still face the massive problem of being specifically targeted by enemy forces for psychological warfare purposes. This should not be controversial. This should be obvious. But we live in a time where stating basic biological facts gets you called sexist. And Andrew doesn't care. He just lays out the facts and dares Charlie to refute them. And Charlie can't. Every time Charlie tries to make a point, Andrew comes back with data, with historical examples, with physical realities that can't be argued away. Let me know in the comments if you think there's any validity to Charlie's argument here, because I genuinely cannot see it.
Blow the hell out of each other, right? But then when they blow up each other's technology, it still comes down to infantry-based combat. Why do you think they train people to be infantrymen? Because it still comes down to that. And there's lots of places you can't get technology. You can't always get technology in the deep, dark jungle or in the high deserts or in the snow-covered fields
Ukraine
and plains.
Is low on, I think they're pulling very, very old.
It's not just that. Think about here in the United States. You're going to get a
Mm-hmm.
tank through Michigan in the wintertime? I don't think so. I don't think so. So the thing is like, yeah, it requires the requisite is a lot of strength, regardless of technology. And even utilizing technology requires a lot of physical strength. Tanks require loading from shells, carrying tons of shells, carrying tons of equipment and ammunition. And not only that, you have to be more resistant to the elements. And men are. Men are more resistant to elements than women are. And so they have kind of everything going for them. They're the super soldier. And they were designed basically to be super soldiers, right? That's
I mean, I think you might have an exaggerated idea of what the average starving Russian farm boy might look like.
I think
a lot of the boys recruited into, or drafted into warfare over to, across.
How do you think you would do in a physical fist fight with the average Russian starving farm boy?
Depends on how tall he is. I have beaten, well, it's been a long time since I've
I mean,
fist fought my brothers,
honestly,
but-
out of just any random Russian farm boy who's starving that you can think of, who you came across, right? How well do you think you would do if you tangled up with him in a physical conflict?
Physical fist fighting? Not well.
Not well.
But if I had a gun, I think we'd be about equal.
Yeah, but
Or
if
a
he,
knife, or a spear, or swords.
but if he had
I
a
think we'd be
gun,
fine.
I don't think you would be equal. I think that starving peasant, who's male, is still going to be 10 times more dangerous than you with a gun.
With a gun?
Yes, he's fat. He's going to be faster.
But again,
He's going to be
this is
stronger. He's going to have
women
better
and men
predatory instincts.
They are like equal when it comes to using guns.
You're-
Like there is
You're
like
thinking about this the wrong way. If I set you up right here, okay, and we lay you down on a table and you have a rifle and the rifle's been sighted in, and all you have to do is aim it at the target and pull the trigger, you can do that equal to a man.
Yeah,
Totally agree. But if you have to carry that fucking thing for 60 miles and all the ammunition that comes with it and all of the equipment that you need to sustain yourself to survive in any sort of environment with you, you're going to have a huge problem. And the reason you're going to have a huge problem is because you don't have to just carry your equipment. You got to carry the guy's equipment next to you as well for the things that they're doing. And men are on average 50 to 75% stronger than women. That's why they're capable of doing that, and women aren't.
Well, the me of right now is perhaps, yes, not equipped to do that, but there are certainly women who, carry very heavy loads when they camp or hike
I agree.
and travel far distances. There's also,
There are
I think
some
that,
women,
that a woman
yes.
who hunts regularly would be much, better equipped in that sort of scenario than, like, I don't know, a teenage boy who's
No.
never picked up a gun in his
No,
life.
because it's the strength differential means so much.
Not with a gun.
With a gun, it means a lot. You have to. Okay.
Okay, not
I
knowing
wish.
how to
I
use
wish
a
we
gun.
had one here so I could demonstrate this for you. But I think I can at least express it for you. Okay. Do you agree with me that ammunition weighs a lot?
Yeah,
Okay.
weighs a lot.
It weighs a lot. Okay.
It's a bitch.
How would you feel about carrying 400 rounds of it on your chest?
I would hate it.
Yeah, along with full magazines and the rifle itself, and your cleaning kit with it, and your food for the day, your basic mess kit, your basic mess gear, your sleeping bag, everything else that you have. And then
It
at the
would
end of a
suck.
long hike,
It would
you're
suck.
expected to fight.
Got it. Keeping your exact voice and style, just trimming fat. All right, so let's talk about what we just watched, because Andrew Wilson absolutely demolished Charlie in this debate. Like, it wasn't even close. And the reason it wasn't close is because Andrew was willing to talk about the actual realities of combat, while Charlie was living in some theoretical world where guns are the great equalizer and physical strength doesn't matter. Here's the bottom line. Women should not be in frontline combat roles. Not because they're not brave, not because they can't contribute to the military in other ways, but because the physical requirements are so extreme that the vast majority of women cannot meet them. And when you lower the standards to accommodate women, you put everyone at risk. You put the mission at risk. You put the entire unit at risk. And look, we didn't even get into the biggest issue, which Andrew touched on but didn't fully expand: unit cohesion. You put men and women together in high-stress combat situations for extended periods of time, things happen. Relationships form. Jealousies develop. The mission becomes secondary to interpersonal dynamics. That's not sexist to point out. That's human nature. The military has known this for decades, which is why they resisted integrating women into combat roles for so long. But we live in this era where feelings matter more than facts, where we have to pretend that men and women are physically identical because admitting biological differences is somehow offensive. And so we get people like Charlie, who genuinely believes that a woman with a gun is just as effective as a man with a gun, completely ignoring the reality that you have to carry that gun and all the ammunition and all the gear for miles and miles before you ever pull the trigger. Andrew brought the receipts on this one. He brought up Navy SEALs. We've never had a female Navy SEAL. Why? Because the standards are so extreme that no woman has ever passed them. And before anyone says, well, they should just lower the standards, no. Hell no. Those standards exist because anything less and people die. You don't lower standards for elite special forces units to make people feel included. That's insane. And then the point about enemy combatants specifically targeting female soldiers. This is the part that makes people really uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. Andrew laid out exactly what enemy forces would do, used historical examples, explained the tactical advantage in terms of psychological warfare. And Charlie had no response. Because there is no good response. That's reality. Look at what's happening in Ukraine right now. Andrew brought this up too. It's infantry-based warfare, World War II-style combat. Trenches, artillery, boots on the ground. It's not all drones, it's not all technology. At the end of the day, it comes down to who can carry more, who can fight harder, who can endure more. And men have a massive biological advantage in all of those categories. Every time Charlie tried to pivot, Andrew brought her back. Every time she tried to make it about something else, Andrew refocused on the core issue: physical capability and the realities of combat. And you know what the worst part is? The fact that this is even a debate. This should be obvious to anyone who understands even the basics of human biology and military operations. But we've gotten so far away from reality, so consumed by ideology, that we're willing to risk mission effectiveness and soldiers' lives to prove a political point. It's not about what's best for the military. It's not about what's best for national defense. It's about checking a box. Never mind that those women can't meet the physical standards. Never mind that the men around them now have to carry extra weight to compensate. Never mind that mission success rates go down. As long as we can pat ourselves on the back for being progressive, right? Andrew gets it. You don't play games with national defense. You set the standards at whatever level is necessary to accomplish the mission, and you find the people who can meet those standards. And if that means it's almost entirely men, so be it. That's reality. If you're still watching, drop a comment and let me know if you think there's any scenario where women should be in frontline infantry combat, because after watching this, I genuinely cannot think of one. Smash that like button if you think Andrew absolutely destroyed Charlie here. Subscribe to MB if you want more content like this, where we break down these debates and call it like we see it. Share this with anyone who needs to hear the truth about this topic. That's it for this one. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.